guys, it's Jack from JoeToPro.com, and today I'm going to do a lesson on a natural minor 12-bar blues. So this is going to give us a lot of different kind of insights into theory and soloing practices and rhythm playing as well. So it's going to be a kind of pretty comprehensive lesson. And as always, if anything seems like too much in the explanations in terms of the theory, then you can always go to JoeToPro.com and check out the very kind of structured and long-term, like learn everything kind of plans that we have there as far as the theory goes. You'll be able to follow along today for playing for sure, but if any of the concepts seem like too much, then definitely check out the website from Joe to Pro so that you can kind of get caught up to speed on your theory. Okay, so the first thing that we want to recognize with a natural minor or just a minor blues is the fact that it's not as complicated actually as a standard 12-bar blues or a standard blues, which kind of implies a dominant 7-based kind of thing, right? So like a standard blues where you have like, you know, like these dominant 7-chord jams, right? Where everything is a dominant 7. When we have those kind of like regular standard blues progressions and every chord is a dominant 7, that's a whole thing with like shifting mixolydian scales that gets very, very complicated. Even though it sounds basic, the applications are actually really, really complicated in terms of scale choices, because of the fact that blues music, it is inherently unstable because every chord is a dominant 7, which means it's like a shifting mixolydian thing. And I've talked about that in other lessons, so go ahead and check out some previous lessons for that, or again, check out the website. But what we're going to see today is that a minor blues, and what I mean by that is that the chord progressions themselves, everything's going to be based on minor chords or minor 7s. Okay? That's actually far, far, far less complicated than a standard blues. Okay? And the reason for that is it's not changing the scales or the modes per chord like a standard blues does. Okay? So let's say if we were going to do like an easy key is A minor, right? So if we're going to do like an A minor blues, okay, which refers to the chords, not the scales, you know, then what we would see is we'd have 3 chords going on, A minor or A minor 7, the 4-chord D minor 7, right? And then, we go through our progression. Then the 3rd chord is the 5-chord, the E minor 7, D minor 7, back to A minor 7. And we'll get into the actual progression in more detail in a second. But we only have 3 chords. A minor 7, D minor 7, E minor 7. Okay? So the notes in an A minor 7 are A, C, E, G. The notes in a D minor 7 are D, F, A, C. And the notes in an E minor 7 are E, G, B, D. So no sharps, no flats. Everything in that comes from the A natural minor scale, which is the relative minor of C major. C major, no sharps or flats. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. If you build off the 1, 7, 6, the 6th note of a major scale, you get your natural minor, or you get your relative minor rather, and then we're leading it as a natural minor. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So that's A natural minor. We're just stacking the notes from that scale, A, C, E, G, D, F, A, C, E, G, B, D, to get our chords, our 3 primary chords, our 1, 4, and 5 chords. So there's always going to be exceptions. You can always have more complicated progressions that use, substitutions or, switch to a dominant 7 or, do all kinds of more fancy jazz blues type things. But a standard minor blues, which means like a 12-bar blues progression, but everything is based on the minor chords instead of the dominant 7 chords, it doesn't change keys. Okay, so that's kind of nice. You know, theoretically, it actually makes it a little bit easier to understand, and it makes our soloing choices a little bit easier, although we'll see we still can have several choices going on. Okay, but anyways, that's just kind of a front load of the theory. If you felt like, you know, it's hard to follow that, again, check out the website because you can get more in-depth on the theory there, and everything that we cover in any other lesson is going to make more sense. Okay, now let's talk about the actual progression itself. So we're going to follow a more or less standard 12-bar blues progression, which is 3 4-measure phrases, right? Music usually comes in groups of 4 measures. That's a typical phrase length. So if we think 1 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord, 1 chord, that would be our first phrase, okay? 1 4 1 1, A D A A. Our second phrase, pretty standard, 4 4 1 1. So that was D D A A. Our last phrase, even in basic 12-bar blues, it gets structured in all kinds of different ways. Sometimes 5 5 1 1, sometimes 5 5 1 5, sometimes 5 4 1 5, sometimes, you know, 5 4 1 1. You know, there's all different ways that even in a very standard 12-bar blues, the last phrase gets structured. But let's do ours as 5 4 1 1. Okay. Okay, so now we understand the structure of our 12-bar blues. Okay, it's going to go 1 4 1 1 4 4 1 1 5 4 1, and we're going to stick to 1. Okay, and again, there's lots of variations, but that's going to be our basic 12-bar blues that we're going to cruise through. All right. So if you need any review of the shapes, again, you know, you could check out the website, but I'll just give you a quick overview here in case you need it. So there's many ways to play, you know, A minor 7. Those are all A minor 7s, right? But it gets a little high up there for an acoustic. But we're going to stick to one really basic one, which is a 6-string minor 7 shape, bar, all 6. Put your 3rd finger down on the 5th string. And that gives us A, E, G, C, E, A, which is our root 5th, minor 7, minor 3rd, 5th octave. And it's good to kind of know the details, like what numbers and what notes you're playing, and not just have a shape memorized. Okay? For our D minor 7 and E minor 7, we're going to use 5th string bar chord minor 7 shapes, which is the bar up to the 5th string with 2 on the 2nd string and 3 on the 4th string. And in this case, that gives us D, A, C, F, A, which is our root 5th, minor 7, minor 3rd, and 5th again. And then up here, it's obviously the same numbers. You'd have root 5th, minor 7, minor 3rd, 5th. In this case, it would be E, B, D, G, B. Okay? So those are our shapes that we're going to need. Okay? So if you needed to practice the 12-bar blues just to get real comfortable with those shapes, level 1 would be just hit on beat 1. Count the beat 4. You can use a metronome or not, but just cruise through like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Then the E chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay? So that would be very, very basic way through. The goal of our playing today is going to be to incorporate all different elements between chords, bass, and soloing ideas or fills. Okay, so it's going to get complicated, but you have to make sure you have every basic step along the way in order to have a chance to get more complicated. Okay, so the next level of complication would be, you know, add like a real basic strumming idea. Okay, so if we want to be stylistically appropriate for like any kind of bluesies type thing, we need a couple rhythm ideas going on, okay? One for sure is swung eighths, very, very common. So instead of dot, 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 dot for eighths, it's long, short, long, short, long, short, long, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, which is based off a triplet like 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. Okay, so that's a swung eighth feel, right? So that's one element. Another element would be playing more on the offbeats, using anticipation, which means, you know, we go into a chord a half beat earlier than we expect. So these are all ideas that we can use to, you know, be stylistically appropriate. And I'm not trying to teach you a set song or set riffs. I'm just teaching you, if I give you like a set idea or set rhythm or set riff, it's just to illustrate the process. Because as always, like, I don't love teaching songs as much as I love teaching concepts, because with the concepts, you can write your own music, right? Yeah, a lot of times you can learn a song, learn another song, and you're kind of subconsciously getting the concepts down, and then you can write your own music. But a lot of times people get stuck and they never do write their own music. They don't jam out and get creative. So I think if you teach the concepts, people have more of an option to like write their own music. Because if you're learning a song that you love that somebody else wrote, well, how did they do it? They did it by applying concepts, you know, consciously, unconsciously. That's what's happening, right? So that's why I like to teach these kind of concepts as opposed to like, this is Stormy Monday or whatever, some specific song. Although, of course, that's good too. Plenty of people are already out there doing it. I'm more of the concept guy. So here's a basic strumming pattern that incorporates, you know, playing a little bit on the offbeat and using swung eighths. 1, 2, and 3, 4. Super easy, right? So down, down, up. That's a basic strumming pattern, okay? But it's got, you know, some bluesy elements. It's got, you know, 1, 2, and it's ending on an offbeat, and we're using swung eighths. So the next thing for you to do would be to go through the 12-bar blues. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So pause the video and take a pass using that strumming pattern and take it through the 12-bar blues. Okay, so let's add the next level of complication to our playing. So if music is, you know, a combination of like, you know, bass, chords, and melody, and, you know, unified through rhythms, then, you know, as a guitar player, we want to be able to do more than one job. Of course, if you're playing with a band with 5 people, you might only ever be doing one job at a time. You might be playing the rhythm, you might be playing a bass, you might be playing a lead kind of part, right? But sometimes it's just you, sometimes it's you and somebody else. You want to be able to play more than one job at a time. And usually on the guitar, that doesn't mean that you're technically playing 2 things at once. It means that you're dovetailing smoothly between different jobs. Okay? So one little thing that we could do to introduce that, or to kind of go a little bit further with that idea, is throw in a little bluesy bass into our chord progression. Okay? So here's an idea that bass players use all the time in any kind of blues kind of setting, or, you know, blues rock or whatever. Lead into the chord you're going to with its 5/7. Okay? And I'll explain what I mean in a second. So say we have the D minor 7 chord, and I said it's got D, F, A, C. That's the 1, 3, 5, and 7 of that chord. Root, or 1, 3 is, the root of course is the D. The 3 would be the F, the 5 would be the A, and the 7 would be the C. So A and C is the 5/7 of D. Okay? That makes a good lead-in to my D chord. A, C, D, or you can play it here. 5th fret, 8th fret, 5th fret. A, C, D, or open. A, C, D. Okay? So say I'm coming from my A chord, and we are in our 12-bar progression. We're going A, D, A, right? So to get into my D chord, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1. I threw that little bass riff in there. The 5/7 of the chord, not that we just played, but the chord we're going to lead into it, okay? Rhythm-wise, which, you know, this can be challenging, you know, depending on your experience level. Sometimes you can just do it by, you know, hearing something and repeating it. Sometimes it's hard. Either which way, you should know what's happening. So if I play that set rhythm again with counting, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and Okay, again, 3 and 4 and. Syncopated because there's a lot of offbeats, right? And swung eighth feel. So the bass comes in the and of 3, and then you play on 4 and you play on and. Okay, now the other thing that's kind of cool about that is when I go to this D bass, it's the same thing as going to the D chord, right? It's a substitute for that first down, down, up. So I came in on the and of 4. That means I came in a half beat early, which is called anticipation. Okay, so in this anticipation, that's another like kind of typical feature of kind of bluesy rock, blues and blues rock. Okay, so one more time, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and. So now in the D measure, instead of going down, down, up, well, I already played the bass on the end of 4. I'm not going to do that first down. I'm just going to wait until beat 2 comes around and then do the down, up. Okay, so it's 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and. Now again, you might be able to just hear it and repeat it, okay, with a good ear. But if you can't, counting will get you there, even though counting is a pain and hard to do at first. It's worthwhile. And even if you do have a good ear, how would you explain it to somebody else? How are you going to break it down for somebody else one day, right? So counting is key. So make sure you can count 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4 while you're playing, okay? So practice that little chunk, and then we'll keep going. All right, so here's the idea, guys. We're not going to do a little bass riff every single chord, every single measure, because then I'd be doing a pattern that's one measure long in terms of like having a rhythm idea, rhythm pattern, and that's boring. So sometimes doing less is better because it makes our pattern longer. So if I do a little bass pattern every other measure, then I've created a 2-measure rhythm pattern, which is much more interesting than a 1-measure rhythm pattern, okay? So what's going to be next for us is to go, we already did the first 2 measures of the first line. The next 2 measures would be A to an A, right? So we're going to do the same idea there. Okay, which is lead into the chord we're going to with its 5/7. Well, A minor, A, C, E, G, root, 3rd, 5/7. So the 5 is E and the 7 is G. Of course, you could play it up high, but we're going to play it E down here, G there, and an A. Okay, so the next 2 measures of our first line is going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1. So now let's put together the first line. We're leading into every other measure, we're leading into the chord we're going to with its 5/7. We're doing it with a set rhythm idea. So here's the whole first line. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and. Okay? So practice that first line and make sure you have it down before you move on. Okay, moving on to the second 4-measure phrase. It's D minor to D minor, okay? So it's very similar to our first phrase, except we just start with this D minor chord. But we still do the same A, C, D, lead in. And then the last 2 measures is the same as the first 2 measures was. A minor. Okay? So here's our first 2 phrases put back to back, incorporating some bass into our rhythm playing. All right, so make sure you practice those first 2 phrases, moving between the bass and the chords and with the counting as well, right, until it's easy for you. Okay, moving on, the last phrase that we have for this whole idea of combining chords and bass, we start on the 5 chord. And let's just do a real common kind of trick. When you're going from the 5 chord to the 4 chord in any kind of blues style, it's very, very common to do a kind of half-step chromatic pass-through. So it's going to be E minor, flat minor to D minor. Minor 7s, actually. The rhythm that I did there was 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. So again, swung 8th feel. I get some offbeats, 3 and 4 and I also have that anticipation trick because I'm coming in the D here on the and of 4 instead of on the next one. So that way, you're doing that shift. Every other measure or so, we get that shift a half beat early. Just a common feature in blues and bluesy rock to use that anticipation feel. So again, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. Okay? And then if you want to fill out the measure, you could do, some kind of palm muted. And then the last two measures is AA again. Okay? So here's our last line. All right, so once you've had a chance to practice each individual phrase by itself, it's time to put the whole thing together. And again, this is not the end-all be-all. This is just the idea of combining the chords with some bass work and a set pattern. Eventually, you probably want to mix those patterns up a little bit, but I just want to give you like one set pattern that you can latch onto that does kind of use some bluesy tricks as far as the rhythm goes. Okay, so here's the whole thing, bass and chords. 2, 3, 4. All right, so far we've had a chance to put together the chords with the bass, and make sure you stop the video and practice that until it's pretty comfortable for you. But then at that point we can add a little bit more. So if you're two guitar players, you could be the lead player, or you could be the rhythm player. You could be the rhythm player doing some bass. However it gets broken down, the ability to do more than one job is always going to make you a little bit more advanced player, right? So say you're playing by yourself, okay, and you want to try to do all the different jobs. So then the next level of complexity would be to throw in some fills. So that's why I really like to teach what I call groove fill exercises, because they get us used to doing dovetail work, moving from bass to chords to riffs and cycling through in a way that you don't lose track of the overall chord progression, and you get to hit all the different jobs in a way that sounds satisfying to the listener and to you yourself as the player, right? So we already talked about the theory, like, okay, that this whole jam is based off the natural minor scale, right? But would that be your first choice as for fills and stuff? Probably not. Probably your first choice would be the A minor pentatonic or blues scale, right? So of course you already know this shape. It's the, for the pentatonic, it's the 1 4 1 3 1 3 1 3 1 4 1 4. If we include the blues note, the flat 5, you could do it here. You could do it there with your fourth finger. I tend to use this one a lot more than this one. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that. Right? But make sure you also take a pass. I feel like you already know the shape, right? But if you don't, of course, practice it. But the letters, right? That's the hard part that everybody skips. So make sure you can say A, C, D, E, G for the pent. A, C, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, G, A, C, A, G, E, D, C, A, G, E, D, C, A. Because so many people skip that, and it's just really, really worthwhile. And of course, A, C, D, E flat, E, G, A, C, D, E flat, E, G, A, C, A, if you're throwing in that flat 5. Okay? So, as far as our jam goes, when would we want to throw in the fill? Okay, well, it depends. And of course, we could get more and more open-ended the more advanced that we get. But if we want to start a little more basic and have a little bit more kind of a structure to what we're doing to help us learn all this stuff, then my suggestion would be when you have two measures of the same chord, that's a great time to start throwing in some fills. Okay? So say you have two measures of the A, right? Like at the end of the first line. Instead of going and 4 and 1, 2 and, don't worry about hitting the chord again for that second measure of A, and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4. Do something from the scale for a little fill. Okay, so of course we're going to want to plug that into the actual 12-bar progression. But the best bet to kind of get comfortable before you try to do everything, the 12-bar blues with the bass and fills, is let's make a groove fill exercise out of just the A minor part, okay? So again, what we're doing is we're just doing the 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. And that time in between that I just counted without doing anything, that's the time for your fill. So please remember, the most important thing is not to do an awesome fill. The most important thing is that you get back on time. Because if you do an awesome fill, but then it goes on like at a weird amount of time, and it's just going to feel weird. If you're playing with other people, it's going to throw everybody else off. So what you want to be able to do is keep track of where you are time-wise. So one thing you could try before you even start doing the fill: 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2. Have your fill be silence, but keep track of where you are with the counting, okay? Then after that, you can start introducing some ideas from the scale. Okay, so that would be a great thing to just practice by itself, and sometimes we do awesome, sometimes we don't do so awesome, but it's just good practice, right? And then once you've done that groove fill by itself, then the next thing for you to work through would be play the 12-bar blues, and whenever you've got that A-A combo, you throw in your minor blues, little riffs. Okay, so here's a pass. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to kind of run through the entire 12-bar blues progression, and you would just added fills to the end of each 4-measure phrase where we had the two groups of A minor. Okay, but there's another place where we have two measures of the same chord, right? Which is the beginning of the second phrase where we have D minor back to back, right? 2 measures in a row. So isn't that also a good place to throw in a fill? And the answer is absolutely, okay? So we could stick to the A minor, because definitely a scale choice that you could play over the entire 12-bar progression would be A minor blues the entire time, right? So that would be a choice, but maybe a better choice would be shifting pentatonics, which means when you go to the 4 chord, you go to its minor pent, okay? Well, the minor pent of D minor would be D, F, G, A, C. The 1, the minor third, 4, 5, minor 7. D, F, G, A, C. Blues note would be A flat, okay? And if you want a more in-depth explanation of why these shifting pents work so well, I have a module called the Soloist Game Plan at my website from jotopro.com, and I go, very, very, very thoroughly for, 20 extensive lessons on all different kinds of jams, and that shifting pentatonic idea is very, very prevalent, and you really will get into it in depth there, okay? But for now, suffice to say that it's going to sound good because it doesn't fight the overall key of A minor, but the notes of a D minor pent kind of works really well, of course, with a D minor chord. If you wanted to stay in this position, you could use the 1-4-1-4, 1-4-1-4, 1-3-1-3, 2-4-1-4, which are a minor pent 5 shape, A being the 5 of D. You could also shift up to other shapes, like you could play the basic box shape minor pent 1 shape on the 10th fret D. So again, that would be a good thing to do, is like, hey, can you do a little groove fill on just the D chord? When you do your fills, if you want to, if you're playing on the 2nd and 3rd string, you can play the open D, which sounds kind of cool. Right, if you find a way to mute the 3rd string, you can do the same thing, open D here. Okay, just some other ideas for texture. And now you've got fills for the D, fills for the A, right? And if you wanted to for the E chord, you could do, it might be a bit much for the E chord to try to fit in fills. So let's just say that we're going to add 4 fills in our 12-bar progression. At the end of each 4-measure phrase, we have A minor fills, A minor pent fills, and then for the beginning of the 2nd phrase, D to D, we can do a D minor pent fill. So then here's the whole thing, incorporating the chords, bass, and some fills for some soloing ideas. Okay, so not super polished. Nothing was set. It's all semi-improv. So of course you could work out like written versions of it. You could keep it loose and improv. Either which way, it's a good practice, and it's very challenging to go between chord space and fills, right? But it's a very great skill set to have as you move towards being more advanced. Okay, so I just wanted to give you one last little idea, which is, just like in solo arrangements, I often like to create kind of like an opening section or an interlude section. And very often in these open sections and interlude sections, the chord progression becomes kind of less important, right? So I just wanted to give you one last idea that you could use to break out of the 12-bar pattern and do a little bit more improv. And this is kind of tailored to, you're the solo player, and you want to have a kind of a fuller sound. Well, one way we could do that is, let's just say our intro section is just going to be over an A, like the main chord, right? And that's the notion of this kind of pedal tone. So if I have an A, I can create some kind of cool sounds by having kind of a rhythmic pattern and any faster rhythms that I want past that, I do it with hammer-ons and pull-offs. And I'm just going to use the pent shapes, okay? But I keep the open A. So that means I got this guy. Now this is a great one to do on playing your pent shapes on your 3rd and 4th strings, because I can play on the 4th string and keep the open A really easy. So I want to map out. Here's A, here's G, here's E, E flat, E, E flat, E, G, A, C, A, C, B, B flat, E. Okay, here's my same pent on the 3rd string. Why does the 3rd string work? Well, I can either do double stops, or I can mute the 4th string, playing the pent on the 3rd and playing the open A. So I got C, A, maybe G, A, C, D, D, E flat, E. Okay? So also switch to a D pedal, but I don't want to get into that right now. Let's just stick to the A pedal the whole time. And so make this another separate little exercise. Now you've got material to use as an interlude or an intro to your 12-bar blues. So, and again, this is all, I want this to be all like improv based. And so instead of a set song, it's a way for you to rock out and play, you know, your own thing. Okay, so just some ideas that, you know, I'm working on, and if we can understand the concepts and we start applying them, you know, the more we practice, the better we'll apply those concepts, right? So on the one hand, we started with something conceptually very, very easy, a minor 12-bar blues, which doesn't change, you know, keys like or shift modes like a normal blues would. It's much more basic in a lot of ways. But then what we did with it was we used that structure to work on moving between bass, chords, and fills, okay? We still got some scale shifts, you know, using our shifting pentatonic ideas, and we generated some intro material. And, you know, I'm still just kind of getting comfy with it and trying to enjoy myself playing through it, but it's the concepts that allow us to do it in the first place. So if you understand everything that's happening, then you can kind of just goof around and make up your own music, which to me, that's kind of like the ultimate goal. I just want to be able to improv, you know, through a structure and have fun, okay? So, and of course, you know, as a rock player, these like kind of blues things are really, really useful, because if you sit in with other people, it's kind of like the common denominator for rock players is to be able to go through like a blues jam, right? So if you want to play with other people, this is something you really want to have under your belt. Just the same way like jazz players, if they get together, they all know most of the, you know, the standards, the jazz standards. So they can kind of sit in, and if they want to jam, you know, and they haven't worked out anything together before, they just met each other, they can always kind of cruise through the standards and play together, right? Well, for rock musicians, it's kind of the same thing, except your blues is kind of your standard. There's going to be 12-bar blues with the dominant sevens. There's going to be minor blues like we did today. And if you're really comfortable with them, you'll be able to hear even if there's variations. You'll be able to keep track of where you are in these 12-bar patterns. And if you're the guy that can come in there and go in between different jobs, you know, to cover whatever scenario you need. If there's a bass player and you, and there's no other guitar player, maybe you're going to concentrate on chords and lead. You know, if there's an electric player and you, and there's no bass player, maybe you're going to concentrate on, you know, chords and bass. You know what I'm saying? And if it's just you, you know, you want to have fun by yourself, or you want to impress other people, being able to go in and out of all three jobs is for sure like a great skill. And you'll hear people do it all the time, like a Jimi Hendrix or like a Prince or somebody like that. People that I really like, when they play, it's like they're free to go in and out of whatever job they want, you know? So I had a lot of fun making this lesson, and you know, I just feel like, hey, I'm just getting started with this kind of stuff and I want to practice it more myself, right? So I really enjoyed today's lesson. I hope that you really enjoyed it. And again, if there's anything in this lesson that you felt like concept-wise, you know, the way the chords were built, or the way the chords relate to the scales or the shifting pence, anything you felt like, hey, you know, I wasn't really quite getting this, that what you were talking about, then go to FromJoeToPro.com. It's inexpensive, you know, no real commitment to it. You just jump in, and it's got all these set courses that are very extensive, and it'll guarantee you to know, you know, how music works, which is a great goal to have. Okay, so check out the website FromJoeToPro.com, and then otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson. Thanks.